the stream now. So we're recording it now, so people can actually enter this conversation, which is really cool. Yeah. So, Jason, you want to take it away on what we're doing here? Okay, great.
We're going to cover a bunch of topics today. The Alvin Kamara situation has seen a turn. So has Washington football team, now the Washington Commanders, and a little bit on Trevor Bauer and what that might mean for him going forward. Now, the big development today, Alvin Kamara, Saints running back, who of course was arrested after the Pro Bowl on Sunday in an alleged beating of another man after a disagreement. There is video that shows him punching this man 8 times and putting him in the hospital. The big thing today, and this is something that I talked about, I'm sure, Nick, we talked about on our radio shows, is that the NFL still allowed this guy to play in the Pro Bowl. So, I mean, the police knew beforehand and the NFL knew beforehand that he was a suspect. The police got to the field, informed the NFL that Kamara was a suspect, and then they allowed him to play in the game before they brought him in, talked with the station, and then events went from there. Amy, is that a normal thing for because I can't believe the NFL is a different angle, but legally, police will do that and say, okay, it's okay, play in this game, and then you can wind up, then come talk to us after?
So it is and it isn't, because a lot of times if police think that they'll have cooperation, they'd rather have that person's cooperation if it means delaying the arrest. Like sometimes they'll call somebody who might be on the run, right? Or who they have an arrest warrant, and the person will say, I'll hand myself in within the next 24 hours. And the police are like, all right, that's easy for us. We don't have to chase you. But I think it's different here because you've got the Pro Bowl. They know he's there. They tell the NFL, so now you've got the NFL's involvement. But can you imagine if it's like O.J. Simpson and they're like coming from the scene of that crime, and they go there and O.J.'s like, guys, like, let me just get this performance on my record. And the NFL's like, let him just play for a couple hours and then he'll turn himself over. And like, I just feel like when it has to do with violence, something that's violent, because they're alleging that he basically punched this guy 8 times while he was on the ground and other people were stomping on his face. It's very different than if there's like a warrant out for your arrest for a traffic violation or something and they're coming to get you. But I think another key thing, which is worth mentioning actually, is that they're reporting there was no arrest warrant. So that means he was kind of in a safe haven because he was on that private property. So the NFL is therefore like negotiating and protecting him so that probably they don't have to announce on the field that he's not playing, like on the live broadcast, because he's been carted out in handcuffs.
Yeah, they're not going to go. And please take a look at Alvin Kamara, who's being led out of the stadium right now. He's not going to play today. I mean, Nick,
that was the ratings. I mean, that's like a WWE type scenario.
Oh, I mean, I don't get Nick. The NFL knows, and they still allow him to play.
We can't hear you, Nick.
Oh, Nick, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
I heard you before. Maybe when you plugged in your little pod things, it took you off.
It was. Uh-oh. Maybe the NFL doesn't want him to talk about it, and they faded into this. Yes, could be what's happened here.
You know what? I'm going to bring in, while Nick gets it sorted out, I actually have this mega Saints fan.
All right.
Oh,
there he is.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, so maybe Jason was a little correct in his analysis. Maybe the league didn't really want me to talk about it, but the league doesn't really have jurisdiction over this situation because it's a legal matter. And since it happens on other private grounds and there was no arrest warrant, they allowed him to play because there was no threat that he would actually flee. And there was probably an agreement with the NFL security at that time that, hey, listen, this incident has come to our attention. We know you're not going to flee. Go ahead and play this game. And then after that, you turn yourself in. But some people will be upset about it because they're saying, okay, listen, we know this is one of the biggest events leading up to the Super Bowl, and maybe there was bonus money for Alvin Kamara in playing in this game. So why disrupt the apple cart when we really don't have to, when we know that there's not an arrest warrant actually issued for him to be contained by the police?
I feel like that's manipulating the sports betting aspect of it because you're supposed to leave some of it to chance, right? So the chance is for the people that bet against that team or bet on him or against him, whatever, that all of a sudden this event arises that would pull him out of the game. But no, the NFL and him and the police sort of orchestrate him staying in the game. So now aren't you messing with the natural course of betting?
Why, boy, well, betting on the Pro Bowl. I mean, if you're betting on the Pro Bowl, wow, that is. But look, this is
Well,
a
I was looking up, by the way, before I brought up that point, people were betting on the Pro Bowl.
this is a protect the shield matter. And this is not Alvin Kamara
Yeah.
protecting the shield. This is after this game is over, there's police that are going to be waiting for you outside to bring you. So the NFL has kind of a wide ranging latitude of powers. They can make a guy play or not play regardless. He could still collect his bonus if he doesn't play in the game, and they can figure that out. But that's just for a look of saying, yeah, okay, we always want to make sure that players are doing the right thing. We allow a player to play when we know that afterwards this is what the result is. That was a really difficult decision for me to swallow by the NFL. If they didn't just say, okay, very quietly, go change, come out, go meet the police off camera, and go and it'll be explained sometime after, because we knew it was going to get out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you this really quickly. I mean, I've been a part of a situation similar to this where, my former teammate Damon Robinson had an assault rifle in his car. And this was right after 9/11, heightened security at the stadium. The dog sniffed it out. He could have been arrested or should have been arrested at that particular moment, but he was not. He was allowed to play. And for me, I was called, hey, Nick, we have an ongoing situation. We can't get into it in great detail, but I know you are a backup safety. You might be our starter today. And I'm like, well, what's really happening? And everyone was really hush hush about the situation. But once we finished the game, I saw Damian walked out and he was addressed by a couple of police officers. And then I put two and two together. So we've seen situations where the NFL would allow for this to happen, especially if you allow your head of security to talk to the police department and let them know that this particular player is not a flight risk. So you allow him to play. He turns himself over peacefully. Like you said, Amy, then there's no police chase. Now he goes down to the precinct. They book him. All is said and done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what I will say is that it actually probably helped the police glean more information because he gave an interview. I mean, a lot of people are shocked on social media that this guy spoke to the police, and not only spoke to the police without his attorney, or I can't imagine if his attorney was there, he would let him speak, but he then contradicted what was actually in the surveillance video. So now they have a statement from him saying things that they're saying don't match with the surveillance video. And maybe the fact that they were willing to let him play made him feel more cooperative when they finally came to talk to him, because it's like, oh, like, chummy, this is going to go really well. The police are my friends. Like sometimes they'll try to create that impression to get people to talk because they know that the second that somebody asks for a lawyer, they can't ask them any more questions.
I know that from just watching how many movies where you walk in and the cop says, you want a lawyer? I don't need a lawyer. Oh, wait, should I have a lawyer? Not if you're innocent. Just going to ask you a few questions. And it never goes well. It never goes. I don't know why anybody. Oh, yeah. Here, do you want to? Hey, we'll do the good cop, bad cop, right? You bring him a drink. We'll sit down. We'll talk. And then, hey, we're just talking here. This is just an exchange of ideas. Even I know that. All I do is watch movies.
So I have a young man who writes for my website, League of Justice, and he's a huge Saints fan. He has like a podcast. So he's here. I'm going to bring him on because he might maybe have a perspective, because people are wondering, like, are they going to cut him? I don't think they're going to cut him. He's too big of a player. But I think he's definitely headed for suspension because there's surveillance video. And he's accused of beating a guy up on the ground while he's down, punching him 8 times. I think at least he's going to get the baseline 6 games, and then maybe he could appeal it and get like 1 or 2 games knocked off. But
I don't know. That video gets out. That's it. Then that suspension just goes up because it shouldn't have to, because look, police have this evidence. Here's the video. It backs up, corroborates the claim. But as you know, just living in this world, it's different when you can actually see the evidence of what happened. So, and it's going to get out at some point because there's a couple of different copies of it. Somehow somebody's going to get it, and we're going to see it, and that's going to be bad news for Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, but at the same time,
well, the biggest thing
that like people get into these brawls in Vegas all the time doesn't mean it's right. But I mean, listen, he beat somebody up because they called his friend ugly. That's how the story is going for right now, allegedly. So come on, like, Nick, could you imagine? I mean, he's forgetting completely who he is and the importance of who he is and what's riding on the fact that somebody levies an insult at your friend and you're going to go like risk years in prison potentially and your NFL career and possibly 6 games for your team to do something like that, whether you're under the influence of alcohol or not, and we don't know. It just seems a little bit ridiculous. Like players should have been to not do something like that by now.
Well, I'll tell you this. I've seen a lot of these situations kind of unfold because you have a nightclub, it's crowded, and you have alcohol that's always a bad combination. And I've seen individuals get in fights, not because of calling a friend ugly, because you stepped on my shoes, right? Now I can apologize to you and say, hey, bro, my bad. Didn't mean to step on your shoes. But for them, it's still a sign of disrespect because they look at me as a professional athlete. And based on who I'm with, how I'm dressed, right there, they feel as though, well, you think you're better than me. So I'm going to show you right now, and we're about to engage in fisticuffs, right? And some of these situations escalate that quickly. So when we look at what happened with Kamara, hey, the guy was trying to get on the elevator. Kamara stuck his hand out and said, hey, you can't get on the elevator. He knocked it away. Altercation ensues, punching, stumping. I've seen it. I've been around it. So I'm not saying as though I am okaying what happened, but I'm just letting you guys know a lot of these situations occur because you may have other people jealous of what you have. And the situation that Kamara has put himself in, the Saints are not going to release it. Now, what they're going to do is void some of the money on his contract. That's the way they get a chance to really hit him where it hurts. And then now someone's going to sue you financially, and now you're paying more money. We don't know what that's going to look like, Amy. Is that going to be $5 million for an oval socket, or is that going to be $10 million for you because you punched me in my face? We don't know, but that's going to be a huge financial burden for Alvin Kamara.
Oh, absolutely. Aaron, did you want to weigh in just from the fan perspective?
Well,
I would assume that the fans are kind of outraged about this because it just shows a disregard for the team.
Well, I would love to comment on it. But first, I want to say, Nick Ferguson, it is an honor to officially meet you like this. My uncle has been a fan of you since he was watching the Denver Broncos. It is absolutely insane. I'm getting to meet one of my uncle's idols. Rest in peace to him. He died back in 2014. But to give my perspective on this, one thing I haven't really seen or heard is that not only is he accused of this, but Alvin Kamara openly admitted to assaulting this man. But what we don't know is what really transpired. We got one side, we got Kamara's side, but it's all inconsistent all around. So we're still waiting for all the information to be pieced together. What we do know is Alvin Kamara did absolutely try to stop the victim. I'm not going to say his name for obviously I want to protect him, but the victim was stopped from getting onto the elevator. And from another perspective, I can understand when you are, as a celebrity, are out with your friends. It was reported that Kamara was out with his girlfriend, Taya, or T, however it's pronounced, along with his assistant and 2 male friends being Pierce and Harris. Like when you're with a certain group of friends, you're going into like a tight space, like an elevator, right? You don't know what's going to happen. You want to protect yourself as much as possible. So I can understand that you don't want someone you don't know in a tight space or like a closed elevator, for example. So he put a hand out and try to stop him, and then he got shoved. That's what we know. But we don't know is who instigated what. It was on Kamara's side. We've got him saying that a fight broke out next to him, which means he alleges that Kamara saw a fight happening between the victim and one of his peers. But the victim is alleging that Kamara instigated the entire situation, and he ended up throwing the hands first. So it's a very, very tricky situation. But what my initial response to all is I'm disappointed that Kamara will put himself in the situation to begin with. I'm also a little disappointed that his friends or his associates would allow him to be in this situation to begin with, knowing the importance of him in his career and his now that he's officially the face of a franchise right now. Now, I'm concerned that this might go in a way of the victim, and he might get convicted in 1 to 5 years. And if that ends up being the case, I have no idea. But I don't believe the Saints are going to cut Alvin Kamara. I really don't. The Kamara is the focal point as of this point with the New Orleans Saints. Now that the future of Michael Thomas is still a little uncertain, even though new head coach Dennis Allen reports that he is definitely going to be working his way back into 2022. But we heard that last year. So we don't know what's up with Michael Thomas. Your offense is struggling. You're your only source of consistency. So excuse me, I don't believe they're going to cut Alvin Kamara. What I do believe is going to happen, to you guys' point, they're going to void some of his money. He's going to lose that, and he has to pay the victim for damages. But I also believe that they can come to a sort of settlement. I believe that's why the court date for Kamara was pushed back to March 8th. I believe he and his attorney are going to get together with the victim and try to come to some sort of settlement, pay out of pocket, pay for his damages, so on and so forth. But this is why I do not encourage. No, I just don't encourage athletes especially under the age of 30, to go out and, like, if I was like, and me in this situation, right? Let's take for me, like, I'm upcoming, like, I got my own thing going. I'm hoping to put myself into the next level, right? And I don't want to jeopardize that. Twitter is a cesspool, like, especially if you're on the same side of things. I don't want to risk what I have going just because I want to stoop down to someone's level and get into an altercation to where I lose everything that I built up. It's not worth it. You can lose so many years of your career and what you could potentially build for in the future just because you made that choice to get into an altercation that you didn't have no business being in the first place within the course of, I would say, 15 to 30 seconds. Everything can go up in the smoke just like that. Now, the ultimate question?
Really, and you bring up an interesting question about the fact that maybe they are talking on the side, and if in fact he pays off this person and comes up with a settlement, it actually might be hard to bring the charge if there's no cooperation with the police by the alleged victim. That's actually interesting. I think we have to, Aaron, thank you so much. I think we have to switch topics because we have a time limit here, but
of course, sorry.
Thank you so much. That was very, very, very good point.
Thank you for having me, Nick Ferguson. It is an honor. Once again, thank you for allowing me to see you. You guys have a rest of your day. Stay blessed.
Bye, you too. Oh, see, that's really cool because you got like a fan and he gets to talk with you directly. Isn't that an awesome part of that?
Hey, I'm a fan. I want to talk to Nick about when he was with the Jets. I mean, I got a 3-year window of questions I have from Al Groh to Pennington. I want to know how a lot of decisions were made here.
Absolutely. So
well, Jason, we will definitely get to that.
All right, that'll be the offshoot of this show. We'll have a different show about the Jets. All right, so clearly, as we talked about with Kamara, the next piece of evidence will be the video, and that will be where things can really change for him. As far as the incident involving the Washington Commanders, the big development a day ago, Daniel Snyder announces that an independent firm will investigate claims of sexual assault. The ramifications of the case that's been hanging over the team for the past year and a half. So when I see that, okay, here's the owner of the team that wants things to be found positively for him, he's hiring an independent firm to investigate. Amy, can this really be independent?
Well, the guy's investigating him. He's hiring someone to investigate him. By definition, is that independent?
No, but you're the lawyer, so I wanted you to say it. Because Nick and I could have said it, but you're the lawyer, so you have to say it.
Do whatever the hell he wants. But like, come on. Who is reading that and not second guessing that just by the fact that he's the one doing the hire? I mean, it's ridiculous. And then they're going to release this is what happens. I'll tell you, like, quite frankly, they spend a lot of money hiring people to investigate. Do you know why he's investigating? Because these investigators that he has hired are compiling all of the information that could be used against him so that he can prepare himself to defend himself. So this is not an investigation. It is likely an information gathering operation under the guise of an investigation to help him be able to say, okay, who's the threat here? What do they actually have? Am I in trouble? How do I defend this? And here's our legal strategy going forward.
Nick, where are you on this? You've been following, you know, a lot of players that are involved there and everything going on with it. What about you?
Well, here's the first thing I think. I think about a cheating husband, right? The wife has accusations against him. She really doesn't have evidence, but he decides, hey, I'm going to hire my own private investigator to investigate me. So, like Amy said, it makes no sense. And Amy, I'll ask you because I'm not a legal analyst and I don't know the legal term for this, if there is one. Now, when we think about it, there is a client lawyer privilege, right? So if you hire a private investigator and some information comes out, I mean, does that are you protected or is Snyder protected under those same rules and guidelines that would allow the attorneys that or the investigating department that he's hiring to protect him from this information getting out? Is that how that works?
Well, that's actually an interesting question. I've never hired my own private investigation firm to investigate me. So I'm not sure, whether the attorney client privilege would extend to me if I'm not being quote unquote represented in an action by that attorney. However, I mean, he's the one paying the bill, right? So you would assume that here's what happens. Like, let me give you a perfect example. You go into a trial, and this happens every day in cases across America, and you put an expert on the stand. Maybe it's a medical expert. Maybe it's like I don't know, a football expert, like for a science expert for Deflategate, whatever. You are paying the bill. That person's testimony is discussed with you and your attorney prior to them taking the stand. And they're not going to say things that are adverse to you on the stand, even though they're supposed to be an independent expert because you're paying the bill. Same exact situation here, I think.
All right. So, lastly, we're going to get to Trevor Bauer here for a couple minutes. Amy, I know you got a big bit on him on League of Justice as well as what likely will happen for him going forward. I think there's two big questions. One is how did they arrive at no charges? The other one's going to be his baseball future. So, because I know that's a real puzzling thing that we see an event like this take place and go, there are no charges. And I get that it's a very fine line because there's a line between consent and what happened. Um, I just default to would there be some kind of laws in place? Because even if something is consented to, if a crime was committed, that doesn't excuse what happened. How did this decision get arrived at?
Well, I think we could all agree that it's impossible to tell what was and what wasn't consented to if you're not in the bedroom. It's really just a he said, she said. So she's saying, I asked to be choked and slapped, but I thought it would be light choking and slapping. And he's saying, well, she never told me she wanted it light. She told me to give her, quote, all the pain. So how am I supposed to know? And then you have that extra layer of she says that she was choked unconscious. And during her being unconscious, according to her, that's when she was punched and scratched and all these other things happened to her. So how can someone consent if they're unconscious? And of course, he's disputing that. So I think it's just a really hard case to prove if you're not there, complicated by the fact that you have those damaging text messages where she actually talks about and asks for rough sex. So, and then you have a judge in the temporary restraining order hearing saying this, if a woman says no in the bedroom, it's no, but here you have a woman saying yes, and Bauer wasn't able to glean from their conversations exactly what she wanted. She didn't put limits on him in the conversations, and the judge wasn't willing to just guess as to what was said in the bedroom. So based on those text messages, the judge rebuked the witness and said, you never made it clear what you wanted, and here you are asking for pain. So how's he supposed to know how far he's supposed to go? I would argue on the other side that if there's bruising, if there's scratching, if there's medical reports to support that the woman was allegedly injured, I would say that that's not something you could consent to, and there's law to back that up. There's law to say that if you are substantially injured and you incur bodily harm, you can't consent to that even if you wanted to. So there are limits on how far you could go, but I think it just became an issue of like the witness not being strong enough and the judge, them having this judge's decision that would cast a lot of doubt on her version of events.
All right, now going forward,
Ooh.
look, if he's going to play again, likely he'll get a suspension, probably somewhat less than half the season, maybe like a Marcelo Zuna situation where he gets suspended for 20 or 30 games, it gets appealed, it gets pushed down to whatever it winds up being. I can't see him coming back to Los Angeles again. I mean, it was a really difficult thing. I don't know that he can go back into that locker room, and I would say he'll probably wind up with some kind of buyout from the Dodgers, and then he'll be a free agent. Nick, what's it going to be like for a guy like this to go back into a locker room after it's over, be back around teammates? Is he going to be someone everybody leaves alone? Will people try to talk to him? What's that experience going to be like?
Well, as a teammate, you're still going to talk to that person. What happened off the field is different than what happens on the field because as a player, that's the only thing you care about. If you're in a locker room with a guy who may have, killed someone, vehicular manslaughter, then your opinions are different. If it's rape allegation, your opinions of that player is a little different. But in this particular case where the young lady is saying, okay, well, I wanted sex to be rough and I want you to do these things. To me, it's very difficult to pass judgment on that person. Now, you may say, well, they are into some unique things that are a little different from you. But the only thing you ask at that point is maybe Bauer should have had, and this young lady, maybe a safe word. I mean, I've heard people talk about that all the time, especially when you're engaging in rough sex like this. Have a safe word. Are we going to get to a point where we're talking about consent where you actually have to fill out a legalized consent form as to what will be allowed in the act of sex itself? I don't know. But to me, the smart thing from Bauer moving forward is to make sure that he gets these questions answered before he engages in sex. But I don't see another player wherever he plays looking at him differently, knowing as though we know the information that we know.
I think, by the way, he missed 80 games already, 80, 81. I think he gets that retroactive suspension. I think they're going to suspend him no matter what, just because they're usually pretty heavy-handed with these types of things where there's actual documented injuries. But then maybe he gets it sort of retroactively, like Marcelo Zuna, and he's ready for the next start of the next season. My question is, who is signing him? Do you think that it's just such a? I still think it's a bad look. I do, because there are injuries to this woman now. Whether he was the one that put them, he's saying she doctored the photos. I don't know, but I just think from a PR perspective, there is public outcry about it from people who disagree with his version of events.
Well, the big thing is going to be.
Well, I'll tell you guys this. Jason, and Amy, we've seen incidents like this in the past where athletes have gotten themselves in trouble. But the public, the fan base, they have been willing to overlook it based on how well the player plays. If Bauer goes to another team and they sign him, and this is something that inspires him to play well, everyone will forget it. If someone signs him and he continues to tank as a player, now there will be more of an outcry. How can you sign this guy as bad as he is? And I think that is kind of where people stand. And you're either on one side or the other.
Well, I'll button this with what really is going to be the sticky part of this is that let's say he and the Dodgers come to an agreement and the Dodgers buy him out, $25 million. Because look, he signed a 2-year, near $90 million contract. Let's say the Dodgers buy him out and he gets a suspension. Probably teams will wait a little bit to sign him. They'll wait for the uproar to go away and try to bring him in a little bit more quietly. And he's coming in and he'll have a press conference and he'll talk about what happened they will try to do it that way. But here's the thing. His suspension can't begin until a team signs him. So if the Dodgers figure out a way to let him go and his suspension turns out to be 30 games, well, he can't serve that until a team signs him. So now you're talking about time going on. Then when a team signs him, then his suspension will begin. And at that point, who knows where we are with the baseball season? Because we could be starting late because of the lockout situation. There may be no movement on this until after that gets solved. So you're looking at maybe could be another lost year for Bauer on the field. And now you're almost 2 years removed from him pitching again. So both sides are kind of motivated to figure out what his future will be. But if that happens and he becomes a free agent, that means his path back to baseball just got even further more difficult.
I think he's going to argue it wouldn't be fair to suspend him again going forward because basically he hasn't been charged. There is no permanent restraining order, and he already missed a season. So I think they're going to push for that missed season to count towards any future suspension. But it's just my guess. I guess we'll see.
All right. Well, there's our episode today. We will have more updates as the week merits it on whether it's Alvin Kamara, whether it's Washington Commanders, or other things that break here. League of Justice website for all your needs there. Nick, Amy, Jason, and any questions, you can hit us up. Amy, you have the button over there on leagueofjustice.com, and we'll talk next time we do it.
I have the special button. No one gets in unless I push it.
Oh, very good. Very good. Okay, very good. That works.
But I would like people to join us next time. By the way, the Roger Goodell presser is coming up in 25 minutes, so maybe we'll discuss that next time. All right. Take care, guys.
Sounds great. Talk to you guys later.